So, are Christian conservative voters up for grabs this election year? For that, we turn to two pastors who are movement leaders. Bishop Harry Jackson Jr., founder and chairman of the High Impact Leadership Coalition and co-sponsor of the recent Values Voters Summit. He is also co-author of the forthcoming book, Personal Faith, Public Policy. And the Reverend Joel Hunter, senior pastor of Northland Church near Orlando, Florida, and a board member of the National Association of Evangelicals. He authored the book, A New Kind of Conservative. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Gwen.
Bishop Jackson, how much do these endorsements matter?
I think they matter a great deal because one of the questions for our conservative community is who do we trust? And it doesn't seem that anyone embodies all the values that we want to put forth. And I think it matters a lot because folks of great stature are throwing their weight behind certain candidates. Another question is going to be, do I think those endorsements are appropriate and or not? But I think that you're going to find that the religious right will probably make a major impact on the final outcome of the general election.
Even if someone like Pat Robertson is willing to endorse someone on such fundamental issues that they disagree on? What do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I think he's probably dealing with an issue in his own mind of leadership and electability. I think the movement, however, is still at the place where it feels that life and the value of life is very significant. In fact, I'm sitting here because there's a new enlargement of the base of the religious right, and that is the black-led church and the white-led church are starting to come together in a dynamic that is unprecedented. And I think that's very, very significant. So the life issue, abortion or not, we're against abortion, that kind of thing, traditional marriage or not, the black families are going through major problems. Those things are not going to go away as major priorities. But guys like Robertson may be asking himself questions about who really is electable in this time.
Reverend Hunter, let me bring you into this. What do you think about this notion of the power of endorsements and whether they're a signal that the movement itself is changing?
Well, I would agree with my friend Harry Jackson in saying that they're very significant symbolically. I think the movement is changing. It's broadening. There are a couple of questions right now, and one is, do you not prioritize your traditional values in order to have a better chance of being on the winning side? That kind of smacks of moral compromise for some of the folks in the movement.
Which traditional which traditional values are you talking to or alluding to?
Well, I'm talking about abortion. I'm talking about family values, the traditional marriage, and so on and so forth, that Giuliani is not as strong on as he is on national defense. And I know that Robertson has always been prioritizing national defense. When he ran in 1988, he remember the Cuban Missile accusation that there were Soviet missiles in Cuba, so I know he has a very high priority for national defense. But I tell you, as pastors, we don't nearly worry as much about terrorists attacking our congregations as we do their marriages falling apart, them working hard and still not being able to provide their children with health insurance, the kind of environment they're going to have to face when they grow up. Those kinds of questions are very important to more and more Christian conservatives.
Bishop Jackson, as he defines the major issues, do you agree with him, or do you think that in the end, decisions are still going to be made by the bulk of social conservatives on this issue of abortion and marriage rather than on issues about terrorism and insurance and other policy issues?
Remain the same. Abortion and marriage are going to remain the kind of centerpiece of the movement. And what he is talking about is local politics, in my view, and the church versus national politics. But I think you're going to find this group of people is really not changed, hasn't changed very much over the last several years, that they're concerned about certain basic issues like life. So it's going to remain the same. What our leaders are changing, and I think this is what Joel may be kind of getting to, and that is how much influence does Pat Robertson have currently? And I was at their convocation a few weeks ago, spoke for them as they're opening up their school year, and highly respect him as an individual.
At Regent University.
At Regent University. He's on the campus. I often appear on their Newswatch program. And so I respect what they're doing, but I believe that this is going to shake a lot of people. They're going to say, wow, he's kind of off track on this one. because they're going to focus in on those primary values that we talked about.
Are you satisfied with the field as it is now, the Republican field?
I'm personally not. I'm undecided. I think it's a little bit flawed in that I don't hear anybody having the values that we endorse and having the strength of leadership where they are saying in a terrible time, move in a certain direction. And that's probably the place that Robertson is caught.
Let me ask the same question to Reverend Hunter. Are you satisfied with the field?
Absolutely not. I agree with Harry. There's been no coalescence so far. It's kind of like, bring me the popcorn because it's just getting interesting. There'll be more and more people who try for endorsements with more and more people, visual leaders. But deliverable constituencies are scarce. And so the strength of a Giuliani is that he is a nationally recognized name, and there's kind of a default advantage there. But nobody that I know of in the Christian conservative field is very satisfied with the choices that we have so far.
Reverend Hunter, what happened with the old conservative movement where we saw Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, Ralph Reed saying this is where the social conservatives are going to go, this is where they're going to vote, and 90% of them did for President Bush in 2004, and now everyone's kind of not so sure.
Yeah, two things happen, really. You have a new generation of Christian evangelical activists coming up, and they just don't follow the old leaders. Second, there are people in the Democratic Party now who are addressing the faith and values question. And that is attractive to Christians, especially, again, those of the younger generation who say, well, that sounds pretty good to me. That sounds like they're really addressing some of the things that are my concerns also. And so you don't have the kind of broad split and a broad, the two-party or two-person conflict this time that you had last time.
Bishop Jackson, there are some in your movement, James Dobson, a very big figure in it, who has said, forget all of them. We're going to go with a third party, especially if they nominate somebody like Giuliani. Is that something you would endorse or believe has legs?
Well, I'm concerned about that in the near term. Long term, it may be very viable because what we're facing now is that the Republican Party has treated the white evangelicals like the Democrats have treated black evangelicals over the years,
taking them for granted.
Yeah, you show up the Sunday before the Tuesday, and then you throw us under the bus after it's all said and done. You really don't address our major issues. That's a primary problem. If Giuliani, without repentance, without any change, winds up being the candidate of the Republican Party, I think there's going to be a lot of folks looking for someplace else to be.
What do you mean? What about Romney? What about Huckabee?
I think all of these folks have some merit. I like Huckabee in terms of his social conservative stance. I think he's got a lot of things to say.
Former Baptist minister?
Baptist minister, that resonates with me. So right now, though, it doesn't seem, as Joel said, that anyone has kind of an anchor there within our community. And I believe that it has to do with how they're articulating the timeless truths that have unified us. We've unified around values and around the issue of family.
Reverend Hunter, if so many conservatives are kind of not so certain this time, is it possible that the power of the religious right, which people feared throughout the 80s and 90s, has that power peaked?
No, I don't think it's even begun to peak yet. I think that as I see more and more folks coming into the movement, that we will have a lot of say about what goes on in the future. The question isn't, has it peaked? The question is it still as narrow? And the answer is no. It's much broader now, and it will be much more activist on many more fronts. And so just the very simplistic monolithic movement is gone in the future, and what you will see is a much more mature and much more sophisticated movement, and the politicians are really going to have to work hard for our support.
Reverend Joel Hunter and Bishop Harry Jackson, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Gwen.
You're welcome.